All right, guys. Sorry for the late upload. I've been super busy trying to get people into treatment today. That was like one of the things that I tried to do today. And I'm working with three different people, one in Nevada, one in Baltimore, one in Florida. They all sent me the 3,500 word essay, so they're serious about it. Getting people into treatment is way more time consuming than I originally anticipated, but I feel an almost moral obligation to help get people into treatment. So many people reach out to me and ask for help, and if I can help, I'm definitely willing to. But if you guys want to volunteer time to help me make calls and explain like who I am, I'm willing to do writing workshops, public speaking in exchange for beds, or maybe if we get someone with insurance, we can also get somebody else a scholarship. Whatever the case, if somebody can help make phone calls, that would help a lot. I also want to thank Scott Epperly, Will Baggus, and Daniel Zelensky for sending me the latest GoFundMes. Definitely helps, guys, and I appreciate it. And then I also want to say I was in LA today and I ran into one of my old Southsider friends that I'd done time with. And he's like, "Hey, fool, let me get at you, dog." I was like, "Hey, what's up, man?" He's like, "Hey, I've been watching the shit that you've been doing on YouTube, dog, and it's fucking disrespectful to the homies, bro. It's fucking not cool, dog." I'm like, "Ooh. I'm sorry, man. Which part? The bro shop porn, the saying that all Southsiders that smoke meth are homosexual, baby Scrappy." He's like, "Nah, fool. Saying that all of our hyenas are fat, fool. It's fucking true. I don't like it when you tell the truth like that, fool. Tell them we're with some bomb ass hyenas. Fucking disrespectful, dog." So, and that really happened. I'm not just saying that to like make a joke. He really was upset that I said that all Southsiders dated fat chicks. And I'm sorry. You know I love you, homies. So, let's get into the story. Sorry, baby Scrappy. So this is my 5 years in federal prison, part 17, I believe. God, we're already at part 17. So where we had left off last time, I'd run into Jamie Lake, and just to do a little refresher of who Jamie Lake is, he's a guy that came up to me. He was in debt with a Southsider, and he essentially had me vouch for him. And then that night, he checked in, meaning he went up to the cop and said, "I can't be here anymore. I owe money." And basically left me with the tab. And that $3,700 that my parents had to pay, some of that was the money that he owed. And then I run into him again when I'm doing the transfer. So now I'm transferring. I'm going to Oxford out in Wisconsin, and I already know that it's going to be a much better prison. It's not anything like Victorville. Everything that I heard about it, people had told me that it was an old boarding school for like trouble boys, and so it looked like a college campus compared to what most prisons look like. Certainly not what Victorville looked like. Victorville is one of those big rectangular compounds with concrete buildings, and it just looks super ominous. Coiling rail wire and the big gun towers at the USP that you can see from the mediums. The mediums, they don't have the gun towers at Victorville. They just have trucks that drive around the perimeters. But, it just looked like a bad place. But Oxford, on the other hand, was supposed to look like a college campus, and I was really excited to go to it. And when they're transferring me, I see Jamie Lake. And I start talking shit. That dude, because he's in a different tank. That guy's a check-in. He fucked me over for money. CO came up to me, "Is there a problem?" I said no. And we were going to be on the same bus together. So, they shackle us up, and they put a shackle on around your ankles, and you're shackled, you're bound by the wrist. Sometimes you wear a box. If you have high security points, you wear a little box, and that's very uncomfortable. You have to keep your hands like this. And when I had originally gone to Victorville, I had high points, so I had to wear a box. But this time I didn't, because I was doing a lateral transfer to a medium, and my points had dropped a couple points, I believe. But anyhow, we get on the bus, and Jamie's sitting, I want to say like in the front, and I'm in the back. It might have been the other way around. It's like 10 years ago now. But I start telling everyone around me, I'm like, "Hey, man, you see that white guy over there? That guy fucked me over." And I start telling everyone. People had known which prison he was going to, so he was doing a lateral transfer to Beaumont. And, some people, I think some white guys had told me, "Yeah, when we get to that place, we'll definitely let him know that he fucked over a solid white guy." Even though my word's poo-poo. But, they had my back, and they said that when he got to Beaumont that they were definitely going to put him on blast. So we go on this bus ride to an airstrip in, somewhere next to Victorville. So Victorville's in Adelanto, California. Adelanto's in the San Bernardino County. And it's very desolate. It's very desert-esque. It's just a miles and miles and miles of desertscape, mobile homes. You see the classic houses with the ATVs that are missing the wheels, that are just rusting in front of the house. And, you see little kids' toys that are festooned in cobwebs and, just typical stuff you'd see in a desolate town like that. That's what Victorville and the surrounding little towns look like. And we pull up to, Jamie's sitting far enough away from me where I can't talk shit. And it's not like in prison, just knowing jail and prison etiquette. I'm shacked, I'm handcuffed, me screaming and hollering at him, is going to be counterproductive, because then the COs are going to get mad. Oh, we'll stop the bus right here. Snap into a Slim Jim. Shit like that. And you don't want that. You don't want to antagonize the COs, because travel days in the feds, or even in state prison, are so hellacious anyway. Being shackled and cuffed all day and being in this turbulent bus and you can't move. And I mean, if you're claustrophobic, it's the worst. You're like, stuck next to some weirdo, and you're sitting there cuffed and shackled for hours and hours, sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours at a time. And they don't even let you use the restroom. Like, you only use the restroom like once or twice a day, and they will pull up to some rest stop, and the COs will escort you to a little public bathroom. It's a very uncomfortable situation. So yelling at Jamie is not going to be something that's going to be well received by this busload of people that are already anticipating a long, tiring day. So we pull up to this airstrip, and it's very interesting because our bus pulls up. We're in one of those buses. You probably see them on the freeway all the time. It says either says Department of Corrections. In this case, it says Federal Bureau of Prisons, or sometimes it'll say LA Sheriffs, or whatever institution you're coming from. And we pull up to this airstrip, and there's probably about 50 or 60 other buses coming from all over the country. And this is the meeting area. So some people are coming from Arizona, some people are coming from Nevada, Idaho, Washington State, and this is the hub where everybody meets. So all these buses form a very beautiful pattern of buses on this strip, right? And you see some people are in what we have to wear. We wear a white shirt and these khaki elastic pants with blue canvas shoes. That's what you wear when you transfer, when you're a federal inmate. But then you also see people in the little paper blue suits that the California Department of Corrections makes you wear when you're transferring, or you see people from Arizona State Prison or Nevada or wherever. And then there's people in street clothes. And the reason that everybody's meeting on this airstrip is that's kind of the meeting point for the U.S. Marshals. If people are getting extradited, or if people are switching from state to federal custody, everybody kind of gets shuffled on this airstrip. And you see a guy in military fatigues with an AR-15 slung over his neck, and he's got the aviator glasses. You definitely know the type. He's just, ooh, ibuprofen, ooh. One of those guys. And it's kind of an intimidating thing. You're in trouble, and there's just this big white blank plane. It doesn't say United on it. It doesn't say American Airlines. It's just a white plane, but it's huge. I'm not I always get crucified if I mess up the Mustang or the Crips or whatever, but I don't know, about as big of a commercial airplane as you can imagine. It just doesn't have a logo emblazoned on its side. And you sit there on the airstrip and you watch people get out of certain buses. Sometimes they're females, so a lot of us have been in prison for years, and we're just kind of drooling watching these shot out girls in Reebok sweatsuits getting out, and we're just dude, do you see that? Do you see that chick? And it's looking back on it, it's laughable, the kind of women we're looking at. But finally they call you, you know, the CO will come in the bus. All right, Leone. It's Leone, but they always call me Leone, just like telemarketers. Leone. And then, like, you get up and you kind of, like, shuffle to the front of the bus, and they let you off, and they bring you, and they start forming lines where different people are going. So some people are going on buses. Some people are going on planes. I'm traveling across the country to Wisconsin. So I go form a line at the airplane. And this is Conair. It's not like the movie Conair at all. I mean, it's just a big white plane, like I said. But, you know, there's probably like 600 inmates on there. I don't know if that's, maybe I'm saying way too much, but that just, the entire thing's packed with people. I don't know how many people. Entire thing's full, and you're shackled the entire time. So we form a line, we get on the plane, and you go on there, and like I'd said in the last video, it's almost comparable to a federal prison bus. You know, it looks like a bus when you're inside. There's various cages that for like the more problematic inmates. So like some people are separated by cages. I heard when like really high profile people like Bernie Madoff, when he was like having to go on Conair, they put him in the cage. Or like if it's the kind of person that attacks COs and like tries to bite their faces, like Hannibal Lecter type people that actually exist in prisons, they put them in the cages. And then like someone like me, I'm just like normal inmate, when my handcuffs and shackles, they just put me in a certain section. And I sit next to another person, and then they hand you a box with food. And it's like peanut butter and jelly, and the peanut butter comes in a pack like this, and the jelly comes in a pack like this. So you're sitting on Conair, and you're handcuffed. Making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is so fucking difficult when you're handcuffed. Like, seriously, if you have a pair of handcuffs from like a porn shop or something, you should cuff yourself and try to use individual peanut butter or jelly packs and try to make a sandwich, so you can just see how hard this is. Like, you have to make it, and then like, you know, the person next to you like assists you making it. Like, what little power they have, they're like folding the bread over for you. You're just with some weirdo that's doing it, you know, that's helping you out. And that's how you travel on Conair. And they don't make an announcement. There's no movies. There's no little peanuts. There's no Mile High Club. Well, maybe there is, if there's meth. But there's none of that. There's nothing that like, there's none of the advantages of flying on like a commercial flight, you know? I mean, I guess I didn't expect that, but in like, you know, a lot of these guys, you'll be on the plane and you'll hear them like, "Damn, fool, I've never been on an airplane before. This shit's badass, fool." And you're just sitting there like, fuck, I made some bad choices in my life. This is what it's come to. I remember going to like Maui with my family when I was a kid, and now I'm with all these guys, and it's because I did something bad. And just one of those things that puts things into perspective. And we flew to Oklahoma. So you fly to Oklahoma, and I didn't see where Jamie had gone. He was on a different part of the bus, filed out. I kind of lost him just in the transit process, right? Like, he had gotten on a plane, and we're all getting on the same plane, but he'd probably gotten on a different section of it because he's going to Texas. So I didn't even know if he was going to the same transit center in Oklahoma as me. So we fly to Oklahoma. And it's a very, you know, it's just like being on a bus. It's, you know, you hear everybody just having conversations. You're like, you know, sitting there talking to your neighbor about federal stuff, you know, like talking about pinochle and handball. And there's only so many things you can talk to people about on an airplane when you're on Conair, because there's, you know, it's like we don't have the same interest. It's just like prison topics, you know. And so we get to Oklahoma, and you pull up to one of those gates just like you would at any airport, and they let you off, and you go through this little, you know, like the little tunnel thing that you go through on any normal air flight. You get to Oklahoma, and that's a really long process. That takes like 4 or 5 hours. You're basically, as soon as you get off the airplane, you're at this thing called the Oklahoma Transit Center. And there's people from all over the country. There's people from Hawaii. There's people from Alaska. There's people from New York, Boston, Michigan, Ohio. People from all over, and everybody's just being shuffled and going in different places. And, you have to do some sort of initial intake. Every time you hit anywhere, even if it's a transit center, now, this is a place you can be there for a week. It's a place that you can be at for 4 months. It just depends on luck, really. It's luck of the draw. Sometimes it's a very fast process. Sometimes it's not. And you have to do all the intake, the medical thing, all that stuff like I was talking about. And then finally, after this entire day, now like 12 hours have gone by of just travel and intake and being yelled at by COs and hearing just the most idiotic conversations next to you, you finally get to a unit. And it's a unit that would look like any unit in any prison, in any other prison I've ever been to. And I remember when we got there, they said, okay, if you're a norteño, come over here. And you see like a couple norteños go over there. Even ones that don't look like it. Some like little dorky guy. It's like, hey man, you're not a norteño, get over here. It's like, boop. Yeah, And then if you're a Sureño, come over here. So they like separated them for some reason, even though when I got to Oxford, they were together there. I don't know, weird stuff that goes on in the feds. And that was it. They only asked about norteños and Sureños. And we're in Oklahoma. We're very far from California, but that's how widespread the northerner and southerner thing is. So we're going in the unit, and as soon as I get in there, I see Jamie Lake. Somehow he had gotten into this unit before me. I don't know, maybe they took him in a different group. Maybe he was on a different plane. I'm not sure why he wasn't with the group that had been taken to this unit. And like I said, this unit looks like any unit I've ever been to. It's 2 tiers. So there's an upstairs, there's a downstairs. There's like some little bullshit library where, like half the pages are missing on all the books. And then they have an outdoor patio. And that was cool. We would like do burpees out there. And they had a TV out there that instead of getting television, it's tuned into XM radio. So we were able to bump like, new hip hop that came out uncensored, which is a treat when you're used to listening to AM FM radio. MP3 players hadn't come into the feds yet. That was in 2012, and this is in 2010. And they don't have CD players in the feds. They never have. In state prison, you can buy TVs, you can buy CD players, you can buy MP3 players now. You can get packages sent in from like vendors. But in the feds, they didn't have anything like that. You could just buy an AM FM radio in 2009, 2010. Later, they'd get MP3 players, but they didn't have that yet. I was like towards the end of my term. So the XM radio thing was like a big deal. And then you couldn't get commissary at this place. And they had orderlies. And if you've been to state system, a porter. So it's the same as a porter. Somebody that basically like cleans up the unit and does like, all the little miscellaneous like chores that need to be done. And the guys that were orderlies would get special privileges. Once a week, they got a bag of Folgers coffee. Then the only thing that they gave you at this place were every day with breakfast was these little individual Taster's Choice bags of coffee. So people had this huge poker table, and that was what people gambled with, was these little individual Taster's Choice coffees. That's all I did all day there. I did burpees in the morning, and I would play poker for the coffee. But the first thing that I see in there is Jamie Lake. And he sees me, and I'm holding my bedroll. I just got in the unit, and I just throw it on the floor. And I was just like, dude, you need to take me to a cell right now. We need to go to a cell right now. We got to handle this. Jamie's a lot taller than me. He's like 6'3", 6'4". I'm 5'6". I'm not as fat as I was anymore from the constipated paralysis of methadone, but I'm still not in good shape. When I got out of prison, I was in phenomenal shape. But I'm still at that point where I wasn't in good shape yet. And so he's like, yeah, let's go into a cell then. Just like barking. I'm like, all right, what's up? The whole unit's watching because I just called him out. And we go upstairs to some cell. I don't know. I think he was assigned to the cell. And as soon as we get in there, like, I mean, I have my hand, like, I'm ready to box this dude just out of principle. It's like, I went through so much over that debt with him. And as soon as I put my hands up, and like I said, he's a bigger dude. He's just like, whoa, like, listen, man, we can release money from our books, and I'll just release $1,000. Like, I'm doing good with money again. You know my money's good, bro. Come on, Leone, you know my money's good, bro. I thought he was going to suck my dick or something. I'm like, whoa, dude, chill out. Like, you're getting way too emotional right now. We're we're men and we're in prison. You don't need to beg me for this. If you're really going to give me $1,000, then yes, we don't need to fight. I'm not even a violent person. It's just I'm already being molded that way from just doing time. I would have never done, you know, idiotic that sounds like, oh yeah, dude, this guy burned me, I'm going to hurt him. Like, you sound like an idiot if you have that mentality. And like, that kind of mentality does not translate well on the street. That's, you know, I think it comes down to, I mean, not to psychoanalyze this, but I think that comes down to the vast majority of men that are in prison have the inability to express their emotions correctly. So they use violence as a way to, you know, address any situation. It's very primitive that way. You know, it's like, oh, you made me mad, I'm going to hit you. It's like, that's what 3-year-olds do, you know, but that's prison, and it was already turning me like that. So Jamie was like, dude, look, I'll release this money. I'm like, okay, cool. How do we do that? Now, they had computers there. They had core links. So in the feds, I've talked about it before, they have computer systems where you can release money. And you can use email. It's 5 cents a minute. Later on, when we got MP3s, you could download music off these little computer terminals, and they had one there. So there was an ability to release money at that point. It takes about a month. You print it off on the computer, counselor signs it, and you get the money. And I said, well, we're at a transit center. Are there counselors here? And I asked one of the orderlies, I said, I kind of explained the situation. I'm like, hey, this guy owes me money. He's trying to pay me right now. Is that possible? He's like, oh, yeah. Yeah. People come in all the time in the transit center with drugs, and money needs to be exchanged all the time. So there's a way to do it. The counselor will come in the morning, and the counselor will sign off on it, and you'll be good to go. And I looked at Jamie. I'm like, you'll give me $1,000? He's like, yeah, bro, for sure. I'm like, okay, cool. All right. You know, maybe, you know, now I'm actually making money off it. And, you know, rightfully so. I mean, the stress that I went in just for vouching for him is like I've never made that mistake again in prison. That was the first and only time I vouched for somebody, and it completely fucked me over. So I don't even remember who my cellie was at that time. You know, my cellie was like, I don't even remember, you know, so long ago. And I just some inmate. And I remember telling him, though, you know, I'm very extroverted. I always like have to tell everyone, oh man, I'm having a herpes outbreak. Like, people are like, I don't want to know that shit, but I'd rather talk about how, like, problems I'm having than have them inside my head, because it seems to be worse if I just leave them inside my head to their own devices. So I'm telling my cellie about it, and he's like, well, what if they transfer him in the morning? What if he checks in again? Like, he checked in once on you. Why wouldn't he do that again? I'm like, nah, I don't think he's going to do that. Him and I used to be friends. I wake up the next morning for breakfast, and sure enough, Jamie Lake's gone. I felt like such an idiot, you know? I should have fought him, you know? And like I mean, I know you probably are like, well, you sound hypocritical. You were just saying how stupid fighting is. Well, yeah, in prison, it's not the same as the free world, because there's this whole thing where, like, if you get punked out like that, that reputation follows you, and then other people start treating you accordingly. As idiotic and silly as that is, it's just the reality of doing time. So he burned me. The Jamie Lake saga is not over, and I ran into him again years later, and it's absolutely fascinating how that happened. But I want to save it for when it actually happened on the timeline of stories I'm telling you. But so I end up being at this place for, I want to say, like 2 weeks. It was probably, I think it was November of 2010, I want to say. And everyone was saying that during November and December, transit kind of shuts down in the feds. So everyone was really worried that, like, if you didn't make movement, like if you didn't go to your destination, that you get stuck at this transit center. And like I said, there were people that had been stuck there for months. So I was hoping that wouldn't happen. But after about 2 weeks of doing burpees in the morning outside on this patio, listening to XM radio, playing poker in the day, and then I forget what movie it was, but it was some Tom Cruise 80s movie. and they played it every single day in the little TV room that they had there. And that's the only thing they showed. It was just like a DVD they had of this Tom Cruise movie. I wish I could remember. It was like he was a bartender in it. I don't remember the name. I'm sure people will comment, but it was something like that. And they showed us that every day. So I never did that. I had to read, do burpees, play poker. That's it. And eventually they called me to, you know, roll it up. And I'm catching the chain to my next destination. So we took another flight to Chicago. And we landed there, we got picked up on a bus, and we went to MCC Chicago, which is located in downtown Chicago, and I'd never been there before. And honestly, like, this phase of it was kind of fun, like just looking out the bus window and seeing a city I'd never seen before. I've been in prison now for about a year and a half, and just seeing a city I'd never seen before was cool. I remember very specifically seeing this girl in like these tight yoga pants, like jogging down the street with her little her little iPod. And I remember how bad I miss freedom just watching her run down the street. Looked like she didn't have a care in the world. And I'm just thinking about what my life's been like the last 18 months. It's been hardcore. It's been horrible. The stress that I've had to endure is just that alone, the methadone kick, everything that I've been through, Jenny dying, everything was just, stuff that stayed with me for years and years and years. And I don't know, for some reason I have a vivid memory of this girl jogging, and it like made me sad that I was in captivity. So we go from MCC Chicago, we drop some people off, pick some people up, and we spend the rest of the day driving to Indiana. And we go to a prison called Terre Haute, Indiana. Terre Haute, whatever you want to say. Some people call it Terre Haute, some people call it Terre Haute. Just like some people call Lompoc. And it's really Lompoc, but they call it Lompoc. Weird. I don't know. It's just a pronunciation thing, and, So Terre Haute is what I call it, and it's this very old penitentiary, and it's a complex, just like Victorville. So they have a medium security, and they have a USP, which is like a maximum security prison. And they also, Terre Haute is where they have death row. If you're sentenced to death in the federal system, you go to Terre Haute, Indiana. And Terre Haute is, it's just a very old complex. So we get there, and they're explaining to us, the COs are explaining to us that we're going to have to do a layover there, and it can be up to a month. So we're going to be stuck at this place for a month. But they're telling us that they're going to let us actually go on the compound, like actually mingle with the inmate population, just like we're at this prison, but we're only going to be there short term. And we thought that was cool. Now, I had to take a shit earlier in that day, like while I was on the bus, like 4 hours before, and I'd be holding it. I mean, it's to the point where I'm literally like squeezing my butt cheeks together because I have to shit so bad. And I told the CO, I'm like, hey man, I have to shit. It's been like 7 hours since I've had the opportunity to do so. And he looked at me and he's just like, oh, you think you're some sort of fucking comedian? I'm like, no, I have to shit. I'm a human. That's part of being a human. I have to shit. I mean, what do you mean? And all these other inmates that I was on the bus with start laughing at me, or laughing at the situation. I'm not laughing at me, laughing with me. And I think that the CO interpreted that as that we were like making fun of him, and that I was like the ringleader of it. He's like, oh, you think that's funny? All right, you're going to motherfucking death row. I'm like, I'm going to death row because I have to take a shit and because these guys laughed at you? That's a little heavy-handed, don't you think? He's like, no, you fucking idiot. You're going to the fucking hole, and that's death row. I'm like, what? So instead of going to the compound and being able to go mingle with the inmates and probably do drugs and just kind of kick back for the month or so that I'm waiting to go to Oxford, they put me in the hole. And the hole happened to be death row, and it was solitary confinement. I was by myself, and that's where they housed Timothy McVeigh. Like, Timothy McVeigh was housed in this death row, and there was stuff written all over the walls in pencil, like this radical Christian extremist writing. Signed McVeigh, just signed McVeigh. That's how he signed it. And I remember there was no lights in that cell. So in the day, there was a window that looked outside, and I remember looking out, and for whatever reason, I can just remember this. I was looking out into like the Indiana wilderness, just trees and stuff, and I knew that Axl Rose had grown up out there, and I might even be wrong. I don't even know if he did, but I'd heard that somewhere. And so I was just looking outside, thinking about Guns N' Roses lyrics and thinking about what his life was like growing up out there. I know it's a weird memory to recall, but it's something I remember. So in the day, the light would illuminate the cell, just the window. And I went around reading all these weird, radical Christian manifesto writings that were all over the cell. They were really creepy. Signed McVeigh. And I don't know if maybe he didn't really write that. Maybe someone just did it as like a joke. It was dated somewhere in the 90s or whatever. And I remember reading it and being like spooked out. And then the lights would go off around like 7 o'clock. And I would just be sitting there in the dark. And the only light that would come in is like this very like stadium light orange, very light glow from outside the window. And it would just like softly illuminate the walls. And I remember sitting in this dark cell, freaked the fuck out. Like the ghost of Timothy McVeigh was going to come and like bomb me or something, like, I know that sounds silly, but it was just like reading the rants and ravings of this lunatic and then being by myself, already losing my mind because the solitude, because the situation. And just the only thing I could see was this writing written in this very foreboding way. It was very creepy. And we will get into the rest of my experience in federal prison, Oxford, how the rest of my time on death row went in my 5 years in federal prison, part 18. Thanks for watching. Palabra.